Wait, Melissa, I'm going to give you host because it's not letting me broadcast. So you go ahead and.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. We're glad to have you here today for our webinar on Say What? Words Matter in Our Relationship with Father Jim and Presvytera Donna Pappas. I will tell you a little bit about them and be handing it over to them shortly. My name is Melissa Singranis, and I am the Associate Director for the Center for Family Care of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese. And as we get started here today, just a few notes we want to kind of go over before we get started. In this format, for those of you that haven't participated in one of our webinars before, you can ask questions. And if you scroll around on your screen, you'll see a little box that says Q&A. And you can put your question in there and type it and send it into the speakers. Some of them we may save till the end, and some of them we may not get to depending how many questions are asked. So feel free to enter any questions you want to ask in there. You can even enter them in anonymously as well. So we look forward to hearing from you and fielding questions and making this more interactive. So, and in addition, what we want to say is that this is being recorded, and we usually put these up about a week after the broadcast. And if you've registered, you will get an email letting you know that it is up, and you can access it from our homepage to watch. And that's really what we want you to do, is to continue, this is a beginning discussion, but to continue these discussions on communication, on matters of family life within your communities. For example, take this webinar and watch it with your parish. Bring people together to watch it, or get a few couple friends together to watch and discuss it together. Because these are meant to hopefully bring people like Father and Presvytera Donna into your parish that might be across the country without having to fly them out. So we're excited to have them here today. And as always, we are just so grateful to have the support of Leadership 100 and faithful parishioners like yourself that really fund our ministry and help us allow us to offer workshops like this at no cost to you. So thank you to them and to all of you out there. So I want to start by introducing Father and Presvytera, and I have known them for more years than I care to say, but they have been a wonderful presence in my life over the years, and I feel blessed to be here with them today introducing them. They are very involved in the they're part of the San Francisco Metropolis Family Wellness Ministry. They have 3 beautiful children, soon to be empty nesters, and they serve the parish of St. George in Fresno, California. Among all the many different things that they do, I know that they are a constant support to everyone and bring passion and excitement to everything that they do in their ministry. So I welcome them today, and I'm going to turn it over to them because I know that's what you guys came to hear. So welcome, Father Jim and Presvytera.
Yay!
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
We got a chance to work with Melissa very closely when she was the camp director at St. Nicholas in California, and also the fact that she's also Californian like we are. Yeah. So we go way back, and it's a pleasure, Presvytera, to be with you today.
So what we'll do is thank you. We're gonna switch over to we have a little PowerPoint. You'll see us up in the corner of the screen as we go through that.
One of the things that happens with communication is many of us struggle sometimes as to how to effectively communicate and work out relationship between one another. And we are leaning towards more of interpersonal relationships and marriage today, but a lot of the things that we'll be talking about have to do with any kind of relationship, really. And you can adapt some of the tools that we're giving you in many situations.
Okay, so without further ado, say what? How words matter in our relationships. And when we talk about words, we're talking about what comes out of our mouth and a lot of other things beside that go into the communication that we have with one another.
Because there are verbals and nonverbals both.
And we're starting off with this little cartoon here.
And let's see, what do we got? Doctors and scientists all trying to figure out what the elephant is.
But they're blindfolded. And so each one of them perceives something different about this elephant. And each one's perspective is absolutely valid, but you need everyone's perspective in order to define what it is they're actually seeing. And sometimes when we're communicating, I see things from my perspective, and
I definitely see things from my perspective, and sometimes you think never the twain shall meet.
yeah,
But in actuality, we probably are saying something that can definitely mesh.
yeah, and the two go together. And I think this next slide is a really good illustration of that.
You know, mine's the blue brain.
The brain's kind of weird.
That's like going, it's meshing really nicely in the middle there.
Anyhow,
That's good.
so what it is you're coming from 2 points of view, and you're speaking from your own perspective. And what happens though is as the two conversations come together, there's a blending, and hopefully it's harmonious as it blends. But understand that there's sometimes there, look in the middle there. Sometimes it kind of gets muddled until you can figure out how to make it work. Pinpoint it. Yeah. So there are some things that are affected by gender. And one of that is our daily word allotments. Women have a much larger daily word allotment than men do.
Let me just kind of read this to you. A woman can effortlessly speak an average of 6,000 to 8,000 words a day. Can you imagine that, ladies? She uses an additional 2,000 to 3,000 vocal sounds to communicate, as well as 8,000 to 10,000 facial expressions, head movements, and other body language signals. This gives her a daily average of more than 20,000 communications. And that explains why the British Medical Association recently reported that women are 4 times more likely to suffer from jaw problems. Did we talk too much? Anyway, now.
For men, though, what's interesting is if you add up the total communications for a man, he averages 2,000 to 4,000 words, an additional 1,000 to 2,000 vocal sounds, and 2,000 to 3,000 body language signals. So his daily allotment adds up to 7,000. So if I'm at 20,000 and he's at 7,000, he's done probably by the time he gets home.
I grunt a lot.
And I'm still got several more words to go. So being mindful of those daily word allotments when a person comes home at the end of the day, especially if you're a stay-at-home mom and you haven't had that challenging conversation with other adults during the day, you're ready to still have fabulous conversation, and your husband may be completely tanked on he's already used.
There have been those times where I've come home and all I want to do is just kind of go veg, maybe click on the TV and just say, leave me alone for a few minutes, where she's ready to go, I need to talk to somebody.
Yeah. So that's and then there are the meta messages. And a meta message is what happens when I might say something, you hear the words, but there's a reason behind what I'm saying. And so
there's more to the message.
Yeah, there's more to the message. It's what I'm saying, but it's also, why am I saying this? And so sometimes we need to be very sensitive to, why is it that my spouse is saying that right now? There's something behind that. And
I tend to have to learn quite often to figure out what's going on behind the scenes sometimes.
Yeah. And then there's posturing.
Well, you know what? If we don't want to communicate effectively and we want to make sure that we want to be heard well or whatever be, I may just kind of take a particular attitude, and I may even quietly take upon that posture that says to her, be careful.
Or we might posture ourselves to protect ourselves. We're not sure how the other person's going to react, and so we try to position ourselves in a place of strength so that we can't have an outcome.
What are we talking about? We talk about, it could be anywhere from maintaining my authority, how important I am, or what I want to say is. Even my stature may come into effect there. Whether I want to show my superiority in a situation, all of those kind of things.
Yeah. And then we go through what's called report versus rapport. And when we're talking about that, in report versus rapport. Rapport is where it's facts. It's just an exchange of information between one another. Rapport is where I really want to make a connection with the other person. It's my independence versus intimacy with the other person. And so that seems to be, sorry, that went too fast.
You went too fast there.
Sorry.
That's good.
Yeah.
So basically giving information is the report, but if you really want to establish an intimacy, or excuse me, a connection while talking, I'm going to be doing what we're doing right now, because I want to make sure that whatever I have to say is carried over as important, and maybe whatever she has to say is just as important to me.
And I think this is especially important in today's world, because we tend to be moving at a very rapid pace. We're very busy. Things have to happen quickly. It's a microwave generation. And so oftentimes we don't take the time to establish that rapport. It's quickly exchange the information and you're running out the door. So I really like this cartoon.
I love it. Talk about my feelings on a wedding day. If anything changes, I'll let you know.
So anyhow, talking about communication, though, we talk about words, but when we say words and communication, we're talking about a much broader spectrum of things.
I mean, the stats are amazing. Elements of personal communication. 7% of basically what's carried out is by the spoken word. 38% by the tone that I use. That's why quite often when you're writing something in an email, for instance, probably they're not quite getting what you really want to be saying when you're trying to express something. But look at that, 55% says that your body language tells the real story.
Yeah, and that's a real big thing when you start looking at communication in today's society. This is not our parents' world. Look at the different means of communication that get used nowadays, and as you're looking at those,
look, most of them are not interpersonal.
Most of them,
they really aren't.
Dilute it down to where it's nothing but the words. And if words only carry 7% of the message, you're missing 93% of the message.
Perhaps FaceTime
and Skype are an approximation, but
make that
not
connection better. Yeah.
Yes. We have a son that's overseas right now, and I have to tell you, the FaceTime and the Skype with him.
We had that wonderful opportunity when he finally came home for the 3 weeks before he went back to Europe. It was like, I can't get enough of him, because then we were able to have that full connection. We were still divided, totally divided.
And so, but looking at chats, looking at Twitter.
Well, the Instagram or the Snapchat.
I call those danger zones.
They can be danger zones, because really you could throw something out there and it's definitely going to be miscommunicated and misunderstood.
Because I can put any tone of voice to the words. If you have something important to say. Yeah.
I sent a text recently, and after I reread it, I realized that probably the person really didn't get, quote unquote, the meta message behind the text. And so then I thought, you better call them back to make sure that they really understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. Emails, chat, Twitter, bad for communicating what you feel, because it gets so.
Love the days, let's face it, love the days when I keep talking to my kids and they say, you're really old thinking, Dad, but let's just sit around the table and let's have a chat so I can see your eyes, I can watch your body language, I can touch your hand, and we can have an intense, wonderful conversation face to face. I like this from our wellness motto is face to face, heart to heart. And a lot of those other ways don't do it as well as having this personal interactive communication.
It's really important. And then it's realizing that every little bit counts when we are communicating. When we are communicating between each other, the messages that we send back and forth, not just in our words, but in our tone and the nonverbals between the two of us, the messages that we're internalizing, because, and I think we can all relate to this, where somebody has said something to us, and we take it in like it is gospel truth. And more often than not, we internalize the negative messages that we receive. And that's really destructive. And then sometimes it's the way we try to protect ourselves and insulate ourselves from other people.
Your little kids do that a lot. I'm not going to hear you. I can't hear you.
So I think the greatest illustration that we have is, and I call it beware the benign. Sometimes we think that, and we're saying something that's not harmful, just done in fun, it's playful, it's a jest, but it has a significant power. An exercise that we normally do, and I guess you can see us, so I'll explain it, is you have somebody who, yeah.
Let's try it on the screen.
My husband works out a lot, and he's very strong. I am going resist my hand.
I'm resisting your hand. Okay. I'm really resisting.
Okay. Now, I am going to ask him 10 times in a row to say something that sounds so benign that it almost seems like it has no power. 10 times. I am a loser.
Okay. I am a loser. I am a loser. I am a loser. I'm a loser. I'm really a loser. I'm 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 a loser.
Stop the 10.
Okay.
All right. Now put your arm out. Do not let me push you down.
I'm not going to.
All right.
That wasn't fake.
Okay. That's not fake. What it is, and I've done this with so many different people, is that message, as benign as it seemed, gets inside and it physically depletes our reserves, our physical reserves, and it has an impact on us. I can't leave him like this. I have to put him back up again. So I'm a winner 10 times.
Okay, I'm a winner. I'm a winner. I am a winner. I'm a winner. I'm a winner. I'm a winner. I am a winner. I'm a winner. I am a winner. I'm a winner. I'm a winner. She had to count for me.
Right. Resist. All right. Okay. And I have to tell you, I'm pretty strong. So just so you understand, it's a simple illustration of the power of the words that he puts into himself, the words that he receives from me. It's the power of what I say that can actually deplete his personhood.
Mm-hmm.
And backing off from that and being mindful. And so when things start to break down,
well, all of a sudden we have indifference in the relationship. Okay, fine. I'm just not going to deal with it. It's whatever you want. I don't care.
And then that leads
affection.
to...
Okay, so we might even hold back affection, or basically just think, I'm just going to live separately from her, and I'm not going to share it. I'm not going to share my real feelings with her.
Nagging, because you can't seem to produce what I want, so I'm just going to pick at you.
You're constantly bothering me.
And then when nagging isn't working, then we get into arguing. And what's really interesting about this particular picture is notice the pointing of the finger.
Mm-hmm.
It's
all your fault.
It's a blame. It's a blaming. Yeah, I'm miserable and I'm going to blame you for that.
That one there, this one is such a difficult one, because there's a lot of lonely people in the world, and there's a lot of emptiness that occurs when we ourselves just don't know how to communicate effectively what it is that we need, what it is we want, what it is that's going to make a relationship sound and whole. And so we go through life just wishing and hoping, but never fulfilling. And then there's the parallel playing. Have you ever noticed, if you're in a preschool setting, how the children in a preschool setting, we're talking about 2, 3, 4-year-olds, maybe 3, they play side by side. They actually don't interact. The only time they interact is when one of them wants the toy that the other one has. Or they might talk a little bit, and share and we'll play, but it's always a side-by-side thing. Well, that can happen in relationship where the couples, when all of these other areas break down, when the communication is no longer there, that we just exist within an environment, but we don't interact within the relationship.
And I think we've seen that. I know that, you know, at one point, maybe I'm putting all my focus into the kids, and he's beginning to put all of his focus into the parish,
Which is very easy to do.
And they're good things.
And good things, but distractors at the same time, because our relationship should be solid enough and should be whole enough that
there's a place for things.
There's a place for things. And the balance, if the relationship is good, it only goes out into those other areas, and then a much more healthy interaction with everybody else too.
And sometimes there's just a mismatch between what we were wanting and what we get. And
that's how our dogs do that all the time.
Yeah. And well, the dogs don't seem to be bothered by it. But we get bothered by it.
Personally, I don't like
what
sleeping on the couch.
And we don't want to settle for what we didn't want. There's this amazing body of research out there right now called Mindset. And it's done by Dr. Carol Dweck. She's out of California. And she examined what it was that made successful people successful. And one of the things that she noticed was there is this perspective that they had of the world that shaped how they saw things. And so she broke it down into two different mindsets. One was called a fixed mindset, and one was a growth mindset. So,
and sometimes they can cross over. But anyway, this is important because I tend to have been raised and developed more of a fixed mindset in certain areas, where my wife has always had a growth mindset, which has created sometimes conflict even in our relationship, as I have had to learn how to challenge myself to develop into more of a growth area. So for a fixed mindset, I want to avoid challenges. I want to avoid anything that may cause any discomfort or pain or aggravation, any of those areas that just might create a little bit too much requirement of me.
Or if you face an obstacle in your relationip, done. I give up.
Let me just go ahead and have a beer or hot chocolate or something like that instead of really having to deal with it. And the effort is pointless. Why bother?
Why even bother trying to work this out? It's not going to work. It's why even try? If I have to work at it, it's not worth it.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't meant to be.
Right.
And if there's a mistake, there's no crawling out of those.
Quite often, one mistake that I would have caused what I've done in the past would have just made me just want to walk away and say, nobody's ever going to look at me the same way again. Yeah. My relationship is shot with whatever that person is that I'm dealing with.
That fixed
They're going to disrespect
person,
me. They're not going to ever hold me up in the same esteem.
It's the one that's going to go around going, loser. I'm such a loser.
Yeah.
Because they just can't deal with the mistakes. Then you have what's called the growth mindset. And the growth mindset person says, okay, it's a challenge. Let's face into this challenge and let's make it through.
You know, through my interaction with my wife, she has actually helped me to embrace challenges more. She's helped me to see that there's greater possibility out there, but you can't stay stagnant. You actually have to kind of sometimes fight yourself to do what's necessary to grow. And
when it gets difficult, and you do get those challenges and those setbacks, you keep pushing forward. You like, okay, this is a step back, but let's go forward. It's gotta keep moving. And if I work hard, things can get better. It's that belief that you can improve the way things are. And if I make a mistake, I can't undo the mistake. They're going to happen.
Don't you think mistakes are healthy? I think they are, because when you quite often is when you take a good look at it, you're thinking sometimes that error here is only going to challenge me to do this to correct what's going on, and maybe, just maybe, I will find a solution at the end of the road.
And the thing is too is when you have those mistakes, if you learn from a mistake, you're not likely to repeat it.
Right.
So let's take a look at mindset in a relationship. I'll lead off with the fixed mindset person. A fixed mindset person in a relationship just imagines that they're going to find their Prince Charming or their Sleeping Beauty or their Snow White, and it's going to be instant, it's perfect, it's perpetual compatibility, and there will never be anything that will shatter that. It's Hollywood. It's everything Hollywood wants us to believe.
When we were getting married, that's how I saw everything. I like that picture.
I know, but this fixed mindset person is not prepared for this. When this occurs, the fixed mindset person is shattered and they can't put it back together again.
Right. Well, we weren't quite like that, but I was really rather surprised when all of a sudden we got tons and tons and tons of baby clothes for the first child. And I said, why do we need all of those clothes? And she says, you don't get it at all, do you? And I said, no, what do we need half of them? Let's take them back. And then all of a sudden we were changing babies 3 or 4 times a day. I learned very quickly.
Life happens. But then you have the growth mindset. And it's that whole we're going to grow old together, and that's going to include the fairy tale wedding and the arrival of kids and those golden years when it just comes down to the two of us, and you can tell that the couple starting out and the couple later on, there's
what I love
so
about
much that goes on
is we see them aging, but I never feel like I age, which is more of a growth mindset, I think, because I always see myself as eternally young, which means I see the possibilities out there of what I could be doing and the fun that we could be having in a relationship all the way through it.
Absolutely. And so there are some myths that go with a fixed mindset. And this is a big one amongst many young people today. If you have to work at it, then it just wasn't meant to be. And so there's this tendency to simply walk away from relationships if it gets hard. You've heard the term starter marriage. Oh, this is just my starter marriage. And it's just such a tragedy that people even go there.
And and it's this one especially for the newer generations, they quickly want to just brush things by and not deal. And if we could just realize that everything does take work. And here's this story, okay? If I get this moment. There was a friend of ours who questioned her mother because Liz Taylor, blessed memory now, Liz was going into her 7th marriage. And she had said, the young girl says, I guess she just didn't feel anything for her husband anymore, or all her husbands, to get to this point. And the mom quips back at this young lady. She says, wait a minute, stop right there. She says, you and your father and I have only had 1 marriage. But you know what made it work? What made it work was the fact that we worked at it. That there were times in the relationship that we didn't always feel the best towards each other, but we decided to challenge it and work through it and make it happen instead of just saying, I'm done with you, I'll move on to the next. Because those are roadblocks. But this couple lived together happily and unhappily sometimes when you think about it, but they challenged it and they made it work, and they set an example, for these children to emulate.
And then another thing that happens is in a fixed mindset is if there are problems in a relationship, then I must have picked out somebody flawed. Surprise!
Hi, she got me.
We're all flawed.
Hello.
We're all flawed.
I'm a diamond in the rough.
We may have amazing amount of patience with people that we work with, but when it comes to the people that we live with, we have so much less tolerance for their character flaws. And it's in a growth mindset, those flaws are part and parcel of something that we grow with and we work with. So when you come down to something like that, you've got a separation between two people. And
how are you going to work
hopefully-
back? How are we
yeah.
going to actually push that wall aside? And how are we going to make that door open, depending on what it is? I like to see it as a door instead of a wall.
Well, I just think it's interesting that one is completely standing in the dark, one is standing in the light. And what needs to happen is that wall needs to come down so the light's pouring onto both halves.
But you know what's beautiful? Take a look at their hands.
Yeah.
The fact is there's a separation in one regard, but they're still holding onto each other's hands. That's the lifeline.
So sometimes, though, you just have to come up with a different way of looking at things. And we have this little video clip to share with you.
This is so cool. I'm going to go home and try this now. Oh, yeah, I am home.
I still don't wrap gifts like this, but it certainly would save time.
You should see other things she can do. She's quite a seamstress. Impressive.
So sometimes it's
Quite
just looking
impressive.
at a different way of things that you've been doing. And if you keep doing them the way you've been doing them, you're going to keep getting what you've been getting. If you don't like what you've been getting, you've got to try a different approach. And that's when we come to
risking in relationship. You know, every relationship needs a challenge. And we're not going to grow. We are not going to move forward in it unless we risk, unless we want to sit down and take the hard look at how to grow that relationship.
And when it comes to risking, there are topics that I think every couple tends to avoid.
Tons of them.
And you know, the reasons are different for each person. For some of us, it could be things that were taboo to discuss while we were growing up. Maybe it was, gosh, in our families, we never talked about this thing.
You think about it: death, sex, interpersonal relationships. It was modeled for you when you're younger. Even sometimes you think taboo not to even discuss how you're going to raise a child.
Or we could be unsure about how we're even going to approach it with the other person. It's like, okay, this is kind of an awkward topic. How do I even bring this up? And then there's the fear factor. Gosh, how is he going to react when I say this? How is she going to react when I say this?
Rejection is a huge one. If I say this the wrong way, if I just let her know just what my true feelings are, will she look at me differently? Will she not respect me in the end? Will I create a barrier in our relationship?
And then also that fear of appearing incapable. If you broach a subject that makes you feel like you're risking, all of a sudden you may not seem so in charge all of us, and that's a little hard when.
But none of us like to feel
out of control.
Thank you. There's the word. There, I was going to say not in charge, but out of control.
Yeah.
Better.
And yeah, it's my specialty. And then there are things that tend to keep us quiet. And these are lies. I'm going to say it right now. Take them out of your head. I want you to think, all right, if you had a toothache, would these pieces of advice work for you?
These issues will eventually resolve themselves and go away. Not without a little bit of talk, a lot of talk.
I'll get used to it. I just need time.
Okay, time doesn't always heal everything that we have to deal with.
If I had that toothache,
but sometimes you have to give something time, right? In order to work it out, but time itself isn't going to take care of it.
Yeah, but getting used to the discomfort in the relationship, that's not a healthy thing. And, it's my problem. I just need to deal with it.
Okay, so what better way to shut them out and say, no, stay out of this one. I have to deal with this. It's only mine. What a great way to be able to pull in your spouse or your significant other in order to help you grow a little bit more.
Yeah. And in order to risk, it takes a certain amount of trust. Now, risking is one thing, trust is another. I have a trust is
letting my spouse pack my parachute. Let me tell you a little story. No, I can't tell it.
We'll finish up.
Okay, and then risk is jumping out of the plane wearing that parachute. So anyway, with our firstborn, we went to speak at a Goya retreat out in Utah. We're in California.
So he trusted me to pack.
I said to her, I don't even have time to get home before we get on the plane. Pack my suitcase.
That was a lot of trust.
Here it is. Pack my suitcase. So we get on the plane. We're going to Utah. There's snow on the ground in Utah, even though it's sunny here. And I said, "Do you bring my coat?" She said, "Coat?"
Yes. Coat was there.
Coat was there. And she says, and I said, "Well, did you bring?" And then of course, the only shirt that I'm wearing, the one shirt that I'm wearing, our son decides to spit up on while we're on the plane. And I said, "Well, you brought other shirts." And she said, "Shirts?"
Shirts? No, I made sure I packed underwear.
And then I got underwear. So we're going to Utah in the snow, and all I have is underwear. Okay. So
it was misplaced trust. But
so anyway, that's not the last time I asked her to help me do that. But
you know what? We had to rebuild
we
the
laughed.
trust.
We laughed so hard. I thought it was funny. Ask her. I did laugh. I laughed a lot. I thought it was one of the funniest things. Then when we got to Utah, I borrowed a bunch of clothes. So.
But when we are risking and with our spouse, it takes a certain amount of trust, and it's trusting, just like with Jim. Even though I messed up on packing that suitcase, he still was accepting of me. I could trust in his love to not reject me for making that mistake.
Mistakes are made. That's hard.
And then there are things that risk isn't. And sometimes we will say, "Oh, well, I'm risking when I do this." Dumping. Risking doesn't mean that I'm going to sit there and just
I throw up all over you with information that you really is not fair to dump.
Yeah. If you've been letting stuff build up, and you just like, phew, that's no bueno, as my daughter would say.
You're not going to sit around and try to figure out how to manipulate your way into helping your significant other understand your side of the story.
Or to do what you want to do. It's not my big fat Greek wedding where she can move the head any way she wants. Okay, it's no.
So you have disagreement.
Yeah. There's the.
Okay, so you want to be so honest that it is brutal. You want to let them know exactly what the truth is, but by the end of it, you've just literally bombed them with something.
Torpedoed them. Take the brutal hurtful, out of brutally honest.
It's a very, very hurtful thing. Oh dear. Let me see if I can fix this. Yeah. Let me see if you give me enough information that I'm going to go ahead and just fix you. It's not a good communication technique, really, because
it's not about fixing. It's going.
There you go. I like that. It's not a fixed mindset thing.
Yeah. And then the other thing, and this is important, especially for us as Orthodox, is never circumvent the spiritual father. If you have something that is just weighing on your heart,
you'll talk to him first.
You know that you've got to bring it up with your spouse. Do so with the guidance of his spiritual father.
Hopefully he'll give you the right directions.
We're so blessed in our faith to have that
access.
Yeah, it's so important so that we can, if we have to spew with the spiritual father, and he can help contain some of that mess and help you put it in a way that is truly loving to communicate to your spouse.
When you're risking, when you are feeling vulnerable and doing it, it's not easy to risk in communication. It's not easy to talk out those things that are in the depths of your heart that you want to reveal about yourself or about a situation. And so that vulnerability is a healthy thing, really, even for men, especially for men, because we tend to guard ourselves a lot more than women. Women can easily slide into sharing all kinds of emotions and feelings and things like that. And men just kind of we're all about facts and we stopped quite often about just the details.
And I know for myself, there's a huge amount of fear that goes with risking. There was a time when I was feeling so unlovable, couldn't love myself, couldn't imagine anybody else could love me. And I wanted to talk to Father Jim about it. And it was so hard because there was a part of me that was afraid that if I brought it up, he was either going to confirm for me that, yes, indeed, you are unlovable, or confirm for me that not only are you unlovable, you are unloved. And that was really scary for me.
You know, we're driving someplace, and
he's behind the wheel. He couldn't go anywhere.
she cornered me. No. Anyway, and she says this, and I was actually stunned when I heard it, and I thought, I know that we haven't been talking much lately because schedules and whatever it be, and we hadn't had time enough to spend intimately that way in talk, but that's farthest from the truth. But it took a lot of guts for her to finally say something as intimate as that. But at the same time, I was feeling just the opposite when you really think about it. I mean, I couldn't be more pleased and more blessed with whom I married.
But the risk was worth it. I mean, I put it out there. I trusted that he would receive it and not say, well, that's dumb.
Right.
And it was, you know, when it's time to share, this was me. My head was filled with all of these things.
That's always her.
And then what you say, there's like nothing there.
Yeah, that's me sometimes.
And sometimes we need to get things out of our head and into the other person's ears.
Well, you also look, there's this great video online, and I can't remember, so I'm going to send it to Melissa when I get contact with it. But anyway, he's a speaker that talks about relationships. And he talks about women's brains as being like that big, giant blob of information going on. And he talks about men's brains of having compartments. And men can easily slip between compartments, whereas the women have to, the mind is just going like there's all these interconnections, things like that, and the men are just compartmentalized.
And so as much as we need to risk, we need to examine the things that cause us to do it. Why are we doing? What's our motive? Watch how we're saying it. Keep those statements focused on I feel.
Right.
I am, not you make me.
And there's the face-to-face, the skin-to-skin, or as we mentioned, heart-to-heart.
Yeah, that face-to-face, heart-to-heart is so important because there's a lot in those nonverbals, and it's hard to be facing one another and holding one another's hands and get off track. It's easier to stay on track.
She's been very brave enough because normally I'm very warm and my hands are cold and her hands are warm.
So when it comes to listening to one another, there are ways that we listen, and there are listening styles. The rejection. No, okay. There's the out and out rejection, like, oh, that's really dumb.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be, as it says, outright or subtle.
Subtle is, oh, honey, I'm sorry you feel that way. What you're saying is, I'm sorry, but the way you feel just isn't acceptable.
And I'm just going to tolerate what you have to say, but I'm really too busy to really have to listen to it. But I'm half listening, but at the same time, I'll just do it enough to make you feel like I've given you some attention.
And then the best way to listen, though, is with acceptance.
Right.
It's hearing what the other person has to say and taking it in. It's that beautiful saying that when one cries, the other one tastes the salt of the tears. It's that kind of acceptance where you're actually putting on what the other person feels.
So these listening styles, I can fix anything. Let me just hear enough to figure out how to fix it and we can move on. Then there's what? Didn't we just discuss this before?
Yeah. If I've heard this all before, I don't want to hear it again.
Or you listen enough to hear just enough so you can prepare your own response to something. There's our lovely daughter in the background.
Yeah, thank you.
Preparing the response in the background. Not background. She was in the background. Okay. And then, can I do something else when I listen? So you're listening to what they say, but you're cleaning the kitchen.
Follow me while I
follow
fix
me
dinner.
around. You know, I'm busy right now. So you're really saying that I'm half involved in what you're having to say, but I'm still engaged.
And the next one is my personal problem. It's please, can you cut to the chase? I don't need the long way around. Just tell me bottom line. Where are we? Where's the bottom line? Because I don't have time to listen to all the ins and outs.
And that's kind of leans into the fact that sometimes
Impatience.
we're just plainly impatient about it. I just don't have time for this right now.
Blast from the past.
Okay.
That's when it's something from earlier in my life, and it when you say
It surfaces.
it takes me back to that, and it's like all of a sudden do not
I
want
will
to deal
not
with it.
visit that at all because it brings up too many painful memories.
Yeah.
Oh, you poor thing. Let me see if I can make you feel better.
Yeah, that's not good.
And then blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
blah,
yada,
blah,
yada,
blah,
yada.
yada, yada. It's like Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
All the adults in Charlie Brown going, wow, wow, wow.
Okay, so when we are listening with our hearts, the one thing you need to do is be open.
Be open, decide to listen. Be fully present, okay? All of this has to do with open, decide, listen, the whole thing. How present am I going to be in relationship? How much am I going to let her know that I am fully hers in everything that I'm discussing with her at that point? Be feedback. Okay, so after she said or he has said a few things, can you enough say, this is what I've heard you say, and to make sure that they know that you are engaged in the listening process.
Yeah, giving feedback also is, so is it like the time when, so that you're making a connection of trying to put on what they're feeling. Get beyond the words to the message. So
Right.
try to hear that meta messaging
Right.
that's going on.
There have been situations where you're talking about something and you know that it's not quite, there's something there, that meta message is there, and it's enough to stay with it to get them to finally get to where they need to be and what they want to really say.
It's putting attention to the nonverbals,
Mm-hmm.
and it's listening for the sake of the other person, because it's not all about us. It's about us. It's not about me.
Yeah.
There.
And
that's it.
remember we said a lot of the communication comes more from the nonverbals than even the verbals. But some of the things that are happening in facial expressions and the touch thing will indicate to you
And-
whether you're there or not.
And just be aware that some things are going to be hard to hear. There's no way around it. There are some things I don't want to hear, but you know what?
Mhm.
It's going to make us better. If I have an infection, I've got to get rid of the infection. And
There was a situation that had happened where,
time
oh, how much time do we have?
there.
We talk too much.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we'll get to it. Okay.
It's a communication. Anyhow,
See, I was effective. I shut up.
recognize those tough areas and be courageously gentle in approaching them. Sometimes, like as I was sharing about the time that I didn't feel lovable, that was really tough.
Mm-hmm.
And
And there are
but
times,
he was able to unpack that very gently. And
and
I think
there are times where I can just tell that she's going into that space, and I don't have to do any more than that and say, let me just come over here, put my arms around you.
Right.
Just let you know that you are the most important person to me.
I think we also need to understand we are not always going to be in agreement. That's a fact of life, not going to happen. But we need to come to a place of acceptance
Mm-hmm.
that what he feels is what he feels. I need to accept that. And what I feel is what I feel. And he is willing to accept that. And
Even if we're not even quite there, sometimes she'll say, that's kind of a guy thing. Why don't you go talk to one of your guy friends about that?
And then when it comes to arguments, those disagreements are going to happen. Have a plan ahead of time that's going to help you deal with conflict, and find something that works with you. the prepare and enrich model that we use with couples.
We use that throughout our Metropolis now, and it's a very effective program for helping enrich relationship couples, preparing couples for marriage.
And it's where they set up a time and a place to discuss thus and such, and then they brainstorm solutions, and they work through it.
And it talks about Father Jim's matrix. It's just this matrix that I have. It's resolution, compromise, win, yield, withdraw. And what we always want to do is never withdraw from a situation. And yielding from situation means somebody's always going to be a winner. And then compromise is a good place to be. But if you can actually resolve a situation, the best yet, because it's done, it's over with. Sometimes when you compromise, you still have to go back and revisit it, but at least you've come to some kind of an area of acceptance.
Okay. And then the bill was just a little thing.
Was cool.
A couple friend of ours.
This was their way of handling it.
They would take some time to cool off when things got too heated, and then when
there was
one
a
of
bell
them was
in the
ready to talk,
second story of their house,
they would go up and ring the bell.
One of them would go up and ring the bell and say, "Okay,
ready to talk."
Here we go.
And when it comes to fighting, we need to fight fair. I'm just gonna put these up there.
No physical or mental violence. Avoid criticism. Avoid name calling. Don't try to place blame. Not while under the influence, okay, folks, important. Avoid absolutes. Finish the fight. Don't walk away. No third parties.
Don't bring other people into it.
Stay physically close to each other. Being right is not as important as your relationship. I value Donna more than any of the situations we may face.
And then
that's what I always have to look at.
Yeah.
She is more valuable to me than any argument I'm going to have.
And if it's fighting to win, then you're sleeping with the loser. So
Ooh.
Not good. And then I think the best part is expect a miracle. If you ask him, he will work for you an even greater miracle than he worked in Cana. That is, he will transform the water of your unstable passions into the wine of spiritual unity. And I think we'll leave it there. Melissa, is it time to open up for questions? Oh,
Melissa,
I need to stop share.
Turn you on.
Wait, I know. I am going to there, and
I needed to unmute myself. I started talking and I was muted. So yes, it's time that we can, anyone has any questions, they can go ahead and type them in. We have a couple here that we wanted to kind of start off with. One was a direct result to what you just said a couple minutes ago about, finishing the fight up and staying close to each other. And in the question kind of asks, in some instances, some people need a break. Is that ever appropriate of just kind of taking breathing space?
Yeah. As long as you communicate the fact that I need a little breather. Sometimes I even tell couples when they come and see me, I said, it's okay to say, you know what, give me a moment, give me some time. Or if they're going to have to sit down and talk about this at length, at least what can happen is just say, look, we're going to revisit this. Let's give ourselves the time to calm down. Okay? They're quite important. And we are giggling because my daughter's sneaking around the background there.
There are other bathrooms in the house. I don't know why this one had to be used.
My toothbrush is in there.
Okay.
Brush my teeth.
Okay. Thank you, dear.
Say hello to the neighbor.
Okay. Anyway, yes, most importantly, it is okay to take a break. It is okay. But don't take a break and make it permanent. You've got to take the risk, and you've got to say, we have to visit this. We need to talk about it.
And I think, too, when you go into those arguments, if you are sitting face-to-face, hands held, making that eye contact, it tends to de-escalate and keep things from getting to that point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, too, that we didn't get a chance to talk about too much is feelings. The actual what feelings are. They're not thoughts, but these are the emotions that we deal with. And when you're dealing with feelings, like I am feeling sad, I am happy, I am joyful, I am aggravated. Those are feeling words, actual feeling words. They're not thoughts. There's no morality attached to them. So when
It's what you do.
it's
with
what you
you're
do.
feeling.
So you can never tell a person you can't feel that way, because it's exactly what they're feeling. Even the Bible says you can be angry, just don't let anger drag down with the sun. Anger is a definite emotion. And so if somebody's saying, I'm angry at this point, we need to say, okay, why don't you explain that a bit? But we're engaged. I'm holding her hand. I'm looking at her. It may feel really uncomfortable because some of us are like, I'd rather slap you right now. But in the actuality, what I'm doing is no, I'm engaged. I'm truly engaged with what I'm doing here, because you are the most valuable person to me, even when I'm not feeling like it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Does that seem like it answered the question?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're getting a lot of comments of how much people are enjoying this and stuff. And one person wrote that this is really great for his wife and him who are separated right now. Talk to a little bit about that.
okay, for the separation.
Yeah, when you're separated.
Can we say something about that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, here. There is a program. We're talking about separations in case. There's a program out there called Retrouvailles, and it means rediscover in French. It is a very effective tool to help bring couples back that have separated or even divorced, which is surprising.
Yeah.
And it has an 80% success rate.
They did a research with 200 couples that went through this program, and I think 50% of them were separated or divorced, and they followed up with them a year later. 80% of them were putting their marriages back together. It's very powerful. It's an intense work weekend on relationships.
Plus follow-ups.
And then you meet, I think like for 6 months or 6 weeks or something. Yeah, and follow up. It's just, it's intensive, but it is so powerful. We've had couples that have gone on it, and they're like different people.
Now, we actively work with Marriage Encounter, and this is a step up from Marriage Encounter. The one thing about how these programs work is you get together for these weekends, and you have to communicate, and you learn tools of communication, effective tools of communication. And it's not somebody else giving you a bunch of information. It means that you are going to learn how to talk, period.
Right. And everything that happens is between you and your spouse. It's not like you have to stand up in front of a room and bare your soul. It's working it out with you and your spouse.
Right.
I think with separation, especially if there are children involved, I think it is so important for parents to say, we exhausted every possibility before we gave up. And my stand is, until you've gone on a retrouvaille, you haven't exhausted every possibility. I've seen the transformation in people who have gone through it, and it is astounding. So.
And maybe you guys can send us the link for that, so we can send it to all the participants that were on this. That way we can make sure they're able to get that information if they need it, as well as, I think, Father, you had indicated an earlier thing.
There's a video. Yeah, and the gentleman is very funny, but he's very engaged into couples and working out relationships.
Men's brain.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So we'll send both of those links to you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It was a really, really wonderful presentation. I really appreciate everything. I have to speak from a personal, having known you all for so long now, I just, I think that even from when I was younger and we were all at camp together and I was not married, the witness of your marriage was a beautiful thing for people to be around, because first off, you could see how much you loved each other, but you were also appropriately vulnerable, and you didn't make us think that marriage was perfect, because so many of the images, I just think so many of the images in our society show, couples always looking happy all the time. And then when you get married, things get hard and you think, well, it's not supposed to be like this. Look at what the magazines say. If I do this, it's going to be fine. And you were always appropriately realistic with sharing with us some of the struggles and the joys, but there was always so much love in that, and so I appreciate that, and I thank you all for that, and thank you for sharing with us today. So I don't know if you have any closing thoughts before we go.
I would encourage maybe for some, if they ever want to even try to find somebody who does the Prepare Enrich program, especially the Enrich section is for married couples. The Prepare is obviously for prepping for marriage. It's a really good program to just help kickstart some things in relationship.
One of the things that we're going to be launching in the Metropolis is our marriage workshops using the Enrich format, just to give couples a safe platform for being able to attack some of those risky subjects and talk. So it's always good. So.
Wonderful. So
enjoy. You know what? It's a beautiful Lenten journey. Yeah. Lent is a growth mindset time of year. We grow through it. So I would say
it's a great way to look at it. It really is.
That's why I'm so glad this happened right here during the first part of Lent, because I think our relationships with others, whether it's a spouse or our friends, our coworkers, or our children, it's a journey we all need to be making. So.
Absolutely.
So have a blessed Lent and have a wonderful Pascha, everybody.
Absolutely. And to you both too. And just a few closing notes. There have been some questions about, yes, this is being recorded. Yes, we will send all the links to you that have been mentioned and stuff. And we'll see if we can make the PowerPoint available. I also want to mention that on April 7th, which is in a couple weeks, we will be doing another webinar, Challenges in Infertility. And so that'll be a panel discussion. We have some great panelists, Father Chris Vassouris, who's from, I know, the Wellness Center in the Metropolis as well. And we have a marriage and family counselor, as well as an infertility specialist. So we look forward to that. And thank you all for joining us today, and blessed Lent to everyone. And we will talk to you all soon. Father Jim and Presvytera, go to your email when you're done with this. So, okay.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.